Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the TheP-LotPodcast. John here once again with the main man himself, Michael Angelillo. Michael, how we doing, man? It's the
We're
weekend.
doing we're
Finally.
doing good, man. This is an exciting, we harped on it last week that it's an exciting time. Um, but today,
Today,
you know,
our topics are not very exciting in terms of like
no,
we're going to be
but
really happy to discuss
the
them, except for the
general
baseball.
general sports sphere, I guess, really cool stuff going on. I mean, Phillies Dodgers series in and of itself, that's, two of the best teams in baseball, if not the two best teams in baseball, perhaps, going at it. It's definitely the center of the baseball world. Everyone's got their eye on it. In addition, women's Final Four finished up yesterday, men's Final Four going on today. Uh, Alex Ovechkin in hot pursuit, actually tying Wayne Gretzky in the all-time goal record with his 894th goal. Last night, he scored a pair against the Chicago Blackhawks, and if he plays Sunday, which some people are saying they should sit him Sunday because it's on the road against the Islanders, and is their next game after that is home Thursday against the Hurricanes, and that's a nationally televised game that I think people are saying he could probably use a day off anyways as a 39-year-old before a playoff run that they're going to go on. But, if he wants to get it in front of the home fans, maybe save it until then. I think they might actually do it. We'll see.
Yeah, I do kind of see that because like you think of like major milestones being broken.
Mhm.
Like it does feel like, the aesthetic of it being at home, like they're gonna, stop the game for 10, 15 minutes. You
Mhm.
know, I just my concern would be Michael, because this would be the most cheese bag way of breaking that record would be if it's like an empty netter.
Well, funny that you say that because he had an opportunity last night. The Capitals were winning 4-3, and the Blackhawks did pull their goalie. But Ovechkin, after the game this came out, Ovechkin told the coach, "I don't want to go out there for with the net empty." He didn't want to score. He would have had a hat trick. Like he needed a hat trick yesterday to break the record, and he had the first goal of the game, and he had the go-ahead goal to put Washington up 4-3, and they pulled the goalie late, and he elected not to go back on the ice because he didn't want to be on the ice for the empty net. They did score an empty netter. It was actually rookie Ryan Leonard's first career NHL goal. Um, but when they were up 5-3, Chicago elected not to pull the goalie, and Ovechkin was out there just ripping shots. He came close a few times. I really thought he was going to get it in that last like minute or so. He really had some good chances, but he's definitely going to get it. And I would assume he probably gets it by his next game. So we'll see if he plays tomorrow or if they wait till Thursday.
Yeah, so I do think that this is a big deal for hockey, obviously.
It's a huge deal.
Especially since I feel like of all the sports, hockey is like their records are like the least like tainted, I suppose. If you look at
Mhm.
it from like, the NFL, like records are just going to be meaningless because of all the games they're adding on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and obviously like PEDs play a factor into that to some extent as well. And baseball, obviously, see the latter of what I just said,
Yeah.
PEDs affecting
No,
it.
for sure.
And I think with basketball to a certain extent, like because like guys are just way more athletic, like the idea of like I feel like triple doubles now are starting to become almost normal, where it used to be a big deal for guys just to get it once a season,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um, Let me ask you this though. So Gretzky has like 80 more or like a significantly amount more playoff goals, like overall goals than Alexander Ovechkin. And I know in like baseball, And I think football, no one really counts playoff stats when it comes to your regular season stats, which I think is kind of a fugazi, and to be honest, because we tend to rate athletes based off of what they do in the postseason. So why are you minimizing their statistics in the playoffs?
I think in terms of records, it matters. Like, I think, when I look at it like this, Saquon is a really good example of this because it just happened, but
I
it
was
made sense.
literally just gonna say that.
Saquon doesn't have the all-time rushing record in a single season. However, he has it when you include the postseason. That's its own thing. Saquon Barkley has the most rushing yards in a total span of regular season and playoffs. He has that record to his name. Does he have Eric Dickerson's all-time rushing record? No, he does not. And I don't think that diminishes Barkley. I don't think like it takes anything away from it. When you're looking at a career perspective, though, I still think there should be that separation of regular season and playoffs. Like you can say, Wayne Gretzky's got the most goals all time if you include the playoffs. You have to say that. Like, I don't know, that's just part of it. Because when you talk about all-time home run leaders, you say Barry Bonds, you say Hank Aaron. You don't include playoff stats if there is a difference there. I just think it's its own thing. And I don't I think not including it, it's not, not that Ovechkin played on like some garbage Capitals teams his whole career, so he never had opportunities. But, Gretzky was a part of just an unbelievable dynasty with the Oilers and even, dominant stretches after the fact. So just because he was a part of one of the greatest teams ever assembled, so clearly he was going to have more opportunities to bang away some playoff goals versus Ovechkin having to go up against like Crosby in the first round, and then maybe you lose there, and it's like okay, it was just a different game. Like obviously there were a bunch of superstars in the '80s and '90s when Gretzky was playing, but the Oilers were just kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the league, so they were always going to play more
Well, just
playoff
also, well,
games.
also too, think of all the labor stoppages that
Hmm.
Ovechkin had to
The
deal with,
COVID stoppage
and
too, like
COVID stoppage too. Like for the most part, he's been healthy almost his entire career.
yeah, it was really only within like the last, I'd say 3, 5 years ish that he started getting a little more banged up. But I mean, he's just old, man. But 39 years old, he's got what, 41 goals right now? Like that's just absurd, you know?
Yeah, my opinion is that I think he is the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. When you factor in, like he was just like he would always get 50 goals like it was nothing.
Hmm.
And like Michael, like you look at like I'm sure with like you and your pops, you look your dad's like pulling up like hockey players he watched in like the 80s. He's like
He'll always put on like old games on NHL Network and stuff, and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, whew, there's just such a totally like the
if Alex
speed. These
Ovechkin
guys are
played
so
back
much
then, he'd
slower.
score like 100 goals in a season. Because how
Right.
slow the game was.
Right, it's just but like at the same time, the skill gap that Gretzky still had over everybody else was so massive that it's like just because you drag Ovechkin and put him in there, would he have broken 100 goals? Yeah, probably. But like Gretzky was still putting up like 200 points. Was Ovechkin going to put up a 300-point season? Like no.
Well, of course. I just think though, I think it's what I find amazing is like we're gonna eventually see because Tom Brady has thrown the most touchdown passes in NFL history, right?
Hmm.
And like we're gonna see one day like someone's gonna have like break the touchdown record, but that guy's not gonna have 7 Super Bowls,
Yeah.
like Tom
Yeah.
Brady. They're gonna maybe have
Right.
like two, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the guy who I think is probably gonna break it probably should be Patrick Mahomes, but
Hmm.
if he keeps getting stuck with mid receivers and Andy Reid leaves and the next coach they hire is a bonehead, that might actually hurt his ability. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's that's what like I think makes these like records seen as unattainable amazing when they're broken.
Hmm. Yeah. It's something that it matters, like this is important in just the grand scheme of sports, breaking the all-time goals record. Um, and I think the NHL is actually probably doing about as good of a job as they could be. Like they're making all of his remaining games nationally televised, whether it's NHL Network, ESPN, TNT or ESPN Plus. I hope it's not just. I hope there's not any exclusive ESPN Plus, forcing the subscription. But I'm thinking it's not actually. So
We're going to talk about the
pretty good on them.
subscription nonsense
Yeah,
later in the
we'll get to
show.
it, but
We're going to get it later, but we're on the vein of hockey. I titled this podcast when I go and like set up the podcast, you could put like what you're going to talk about, like, or like,
mhm.
basically like,
Yeah.
hey, I put what the topic is Osama Bin Torts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's pretty. I think that's pretty. Yeah, that correctly gets it right.
So do you? So there's been some reports. There was a report that came out. Who I forget who reported it. It wasn't this. I'm not talking about the Spit and Chicklets podcast. That felt
No.
like almost like a gossip column. But
Yeah. No, I forget the article, but I'm gonna try to pull it up.
I'm pulling it
Uh,
up right now. Tortorella Michkov. I'm wearing my Michkov jersey right now as we speak.
it was Matt. Oh, it's from Anthony DeMarco. Big, contributor on the Daily Faceoff. He's on TSN. Um, writes a good about. He writes about the whole league, but he writes a lot about the Flyers. So it's a Daily Faceoff article, and there's two massive paragraphs that I have up here. So obviously, we all know since John Tortorella's been fired, the Flyers have been playing good hockey. Michkov looks like he's off a leash, the whole nine. And there were rumors that were coming around of not rumors, I guess, but Cam York was essentially soft suspended after Tortorella got fired because of a spat. All the reports that
So
came
he
out,
had to sit on the bench because they had injuries. It wasn't like
yeah,
they
he
could
couldn't get
just
scratched. He just wasn't
scratch
playing.
him.
So stuff came out that Tortorella and Danny Briere had differencing of opinions. La la la. A lot of stuff comes out, and then here is Anthony DeMarco on some pretty. Sorry, not DeMarco. Yeah. Oh, yes, DeMarco. Sorry, Anthony DeMarco on some pretty damning stuff from inside the locker room. So, what is the Flyers management looking for over the final stretch of games? Based on conversations, it's to get a feel for what these players can give them without Tortorella bearing down on them. The elephant in the room post Tortorella is undeniable: the offensive explosion of Matvei Michkov. It is no secret that Tortorella went to war with the Russian rookie on more than one occasion this season, landing the 7th overall pick of 2023 in the press box. Speaking with one source, Michkov would have spent more time in the press box had it been solely up to Tortorella. That alone, absurd. He was planning on having Michkov sit for a few more games to watch from upstairs or whatever methods that Tortorella wants to implement with his really young players. With 4 goals and 2 assists in 3 games since Tortorella's dismissal, it's clear that there was restriction going on in Michkov's game before the coaching change. Now, that alone, awful. That's your nucleus of the future of your franchise. That is the number one cornerstone of your franchise. That's your superstar, your most talented player. And I understand if he's making a ton of mistakes or playing poorly, of like, all right, let's give him a day to see. But after the first time he did sit him, I can't really think of any other times during the season where I felt that it was like, okay, Michkov looks like totally out of his element and should probably sit.
I think I remember early on in the season when he first was like showcasing what he could do. He hit like that rookie wall where he was just like not tired, but it was like okay, like this, like that initial adrenaline rush of oh my
Yeah,
god, I'm
it
playing in the NHL. This is so awesome.
it
That kind
waned a
of
little bit.
and then like the speed of the game was getting to him, and
Right.
a coach may sit him for a game, not like to punish him, but just be like,
Give him a
hey man,
day.
I don't want to
Just
nuke your basically
it's
like and
giving
the
you a
coach,
day off in baseball. Like it's the same thing.
yeah, or just being like, hey man, like I'm not benching you because you suck. I'm just I don't want you to get overwhelmed because
And it's just hard to sometimes feel confident that that message was being conveyed by Tortorella, especially with this next part. As for Cam York, his feud with Tortorella, to put it lightly, in parentheses, ended in spectacular fashion with a reported dispute between the two following the latter's final coached game versus the Toronto Maple Leafs last week. I don't think getting into the specifics of what went on behind the scenes is necessarily relevant, but it's worth raising more so just pinpointing the tangible regression in York's game under Tortorella this season. It's clear we've seen York not play as well as he once did. As one source said, York quickly became the whipping boy for Tortorella this season when things went sideways. I don't think York is someone the Flyers want to sell low on, and by all accounts, is still a part of their future. The end of the season and beyond will be about rebuilding York, as one source said to me.
Is it rebuilding York's confidence or rebuilding his game? Because you were showing me all these like advanced stats where he's actually pretty
It's
good.
probably more his confidence and maybe playing him with a different pairing or having him play a certain way to showcase that a little bit more on the stat sheet as opposed to just like the advanced stat sheet. Regardless, that is that is rough, man. Like that is not something, you know, you want to be hearing at all as a fan, as a player, whatever. Like when you read a report like with the term whipping boy, where when things went sideways, when things weren't going well, he would always look at Cam York and say something to the effect of like it's your fault or whatever. If Cam was doing that, I don't know. It's just that's a pretty reliable source writing that article, Anthony DeMarco. He doesn't, write anything shady or anything
It's not like
unprofessional.
Jeff
Like
McLean, who's got an axe to grind with Howie Roseman.
right, and even, it's just that was damning. That was a damning read where all of our preconceived notions and worrisome assumptions about John Tortorella that we felt as fans, eh, to see it really be vindicated in a way of like he went out in a fiery, like angry fight, that's terrible. I mean, the fact that it said his feud with Tortorella, to put it lightly. Like it makes it seem like those two were at each other's throats every game, and that's awful. Like that's just not what you
Well,
want
that
to
affects the whole
have.
team. It's not just him.
Totally, it affects the team because especially when you look at the Flyers and the way they are, there's a real tight knit group. Like those guys are really close. You saw how much they were damaged by the Morgan Frost and Joel Farabee trade, like on a personal level. They like it was weeks after the fact where guys were like, yeah, like it's still weird coming in here without those two guys there. Like they're a really, really tight knit group, and Cam York's a part of that. So when you see him getting just kicked while he's down or whatever, or just totally being tooled on by the coach and seemingly singled out, it does wane on everybody. That makes everybody kind of, I don't know, you want to band together to kind of say F off to the coach. And clearly that's what's going on here in his postpartum that now, the Flyers have been playing a lot better hockey to honestly the organization's detriment as, they're hurting their draft position by the day. But
But I also think too,
this is what you
Michael, at the
get.
same time, like it really almost kind of it. We were when we were texting each other. I'm like, you can't not think what would have happened if after the
Hmm.
collapse last year, if you just fired Tortorella. And I know the optics may not have been great at the time, where you're like, Tortorella took a really awful team and got a lot out of them, for
Hmm.
most of the season, and then you fired him. Like to me, like if he was this toxic, like it wasn't. This is not like he was only toxic this year, where last year he was like this.
It was one of those things that I think the Flyers wanted to. I don't know. I think they wanted to end out his contract if possible, and it just got to a point where it was unmanageable. And to your point too, like I'm not saying, different players have different rules all the time, but it's true. If the Flyers truly view Cam York as someone that they want to have long term as a piece, or at the very least trade him for what would be a pretty good return, they're valuing what Cam York is doing and his, like, kind of mentals, as much higher than Tortorella's, and this is what you get. You know, if they want Cam York here for the long run, it's not worth even the remaining 9 games to hold on to Tortorella because he was clearly, like, breaking him down at every single mistake, and every time the puck would jump over a stick or whatever, he's just killing him for it, so, you know, pretty damning stuff, just furthering the fact that I am very, very happy he's gone, and, you know, in addition to everyone being unleashed and playing better, it was deeper than just what was going on the ice, honestly. It was a serious, like, toxic issue in the locker room that
Well, this
is
is what
we're
so
glad it's gone.
yeah, so I'm not to like change the subject completely, but just from like the Flyers perspective. So, obviously John Tortorella is either the most like clueless head coach in North America in all teams, or he's just a grumpy old man who like knows he's going to get let go, so he's just going to be toxic as possible, maybe just to get himself fired in the first place.
I mean, he did essentially quit on the team. Like, really did get to a point where he's like, "I just can't coach under these conditions, basically. I can't coach with this type of, I don't know, play with these players." I don't know, but it does
So
look like
yeah,
he
because
just
we
kinda
talked
gave
about
up.
that last week, where he wanted them to compete and they weren't doing that,
Mhm,
and they've already basically talked about having a rebuild. Like
mhm,
they've like Danny Briere and Keith Jones, and they didn't use the word tank, obviously,
mhm,
but they want to build around young players. That's called rebuilding. You don't build a contending team around all of your young players
mhm.
that are still unproven.
Yeah, no,
What
you
like
need to
what
build
was he
everybody up.
expecting? Like what he thought that, oh, like, like I'm trying to think of like in baseball, like, what was a team in baseball last year that won like the Cincinnati Reds like did
Well,
like go and trade for like Juan Soto or something. Like
yeah.
what was he expecting Danny Briere to do? And I'm not trying to like carry water for Danny Briere either. It's more or less like
Well, I think, like, he didn't wanna I think he was really against trading Scott Lawton. I think that
they've
was,
been trying to trade Scott Lawton, Michael, for the last 2 years.
if I had to guess, a big reason why he wasn't going was Tortorella. Like, he was very anti-trading Lawton. It was like, unless you can get a first and more, there's no way he's worth getting rid of. He's so important to this team. And it's like, in culture-wise, yeah, for sure. Playing-wise, you don't have enough high-end talent to justify holding on to someone like Scott Lawton, who's nothing more than
Yeah, he
a
wanted an
solid
idea.
bottom six
He
forward.
didn't want to get rid of Scott Lawton because Scott Lawton probably was like a pseudo coach in a way because Torts didn't want to deal with the young guys, so he probably would have Lawton do it for him.
Yeah,
Think
I mean,
about it.
he's a
They trade Scott Lawton,
fantastic
and what, two
leader.
weeks later he quits on the team?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, like come on, like
Yeah, it's embarrassing for a
what
guy that, like, has his resume as a coach, you know, one of the most winningest coaches in
ninth
NHL
all time in
history.
wins.
Yeah, and it's just for someone that, as much as I don't think he's a great coach, and, like, just happened to be on good teams for a while, but, you know, very similar to Doc Rivers in that way. For someone that does have a lot of respect in the hockey world from a lot of people, to go out like this is really, really a bad look, in my opinion. I think it's a really ugly look for any coach to really kinda go out like this, but for someone to have the pedigree that he has, I thought it was embarrassing.
It was embarrassing, but not just that
And
too. Like
unprofessional, you couldn't even hold on for the rest of the season. There was, like, 8 games left. You couldn't just suck it
he's
up?
one of the highest paid coaches in the sport. Like Mike, like that to me, to me, it's exactly like Joe Girardi.
Yeah, it's very similar. Those 3 guys are just painfully similar.
because like what? It's like the media. Like I don't really recall the media ever being hard on John Tortorella.
Not as much as it
I
should have
never
been.
recalled the media being hard on Joe Girardi, nor do I
Again,
recall them ever being hard on Doc Rivers.
Doc, it's true. A lot of it was fan driven, honestly.
Like
Really
Nick
was.
Sirianni, isn't it ironic that Nick Sirianni is the one that gets the most crap from the media, and yet he compared to those three thieves,
Dude,
he's the
it's if
like
you
they're
take the
thieves. Michael,
Philadelphia,
they're thieves. They
if you take
stole money.
it's funny because those other three guys are like definite Hall of Famers in their respected sports for coaching, as far as coaching goes. Like the one who is on the fence maybe is Girardi, but the other two are absolutely going to be put in the Hall of Fame. And Sirianni, God knows he's on track clearly with the wins that he has as a coach right now. But in terms of just Philadelphia tenure, like we're looking at some of the worst coaches, and then Nick Sirianni, who's just skyrocketing himself to one of the best coaches in the city ever, like honestly, and by you know he's on his way to be the best in the city by like a wide margin at this point.
Let me let me ask you this: of all the recent coaches, when you factor in the expectations, what they're getting paid versus the job they did when they were here, where do you rank John Tortorella amongst the worst coaches in Philadelphia history? Like we've had some bad head coaches that just
Ever?
like obviously like I'm not trying to be like hyperbolic. It's
If we go
more
in like the last like 10 years,
like Ryan Sandberg like was not really up to the task of being a major league manager.
no, but it's like the Phillies also were so bad.
Right?
If I
That's
had to
it's
rank
really
it,
unfair to judge him on that, I think.
I think the only coach I would put below him is Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
Just because Doc Rivers, some of those teams he had were just damn good and coaching disaster classes in the playoffs consistently.
Like
With
Brett Brown
Tortorella,
had some coaching disaster classes, but he was much closer to getting the Sixers to the NBA finals than Doc from a coaching perspective.
yes, absolutely. And you look at someone like John Tortorella, where when he was hired, the only thing that we could rationalize, the only reason he was here was to get the young guys' heads in the right position to be ready to compete eventually. He was always as like he's the bridge coach. He's the coach that's going to get them ready for when they get enough talent and it's time for a new coach and it's like okay, now we're here to win and we have the right like strategy whatever in place, but we got everyone's mentals is right. And the fact that he's basically done the exact opposite, I guess, like, is that's probably the right way to put it. Like, I think Morgan Frost, who knows how well he would have panned out eventually, but, he was truly dealt a bad hand with Tortorella and, like, being compared to the toilet seat, it was just a bad from the start. Obviously, Cam York being eventually, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back. The treatment of Michkov, we're lucky that he came up in a tougher upbringing, that he's able to handle it. Scratching the captain, like, mere weeks after naming him the captain, Sean Couturier, like, it's just truly, like, it's bad stuff, man. It really, really is atrocious. He just did everything he didn't do anything he was kinda supposed to, and that's really just unfortunate, but he's gone, and I get the Flyers are clearly for the better now that he's gone.
So from the Tortorella uh, disaster, and I think we're going to hear more. More is going to come out about this. They're going to air the dirty laundry.
Mhm,
I think as the season progresses about him, because it just happens. You saw it with Gabe when Gabe
mhm.
got fired. All the dirty laundry came out about like with what he was what was
And
involving him.
players being late and, like,
Yeah, and he wasn't doing anything about it. Stuff like that.
Right.
Let's go into the NFL, Michael. So we're a couple weeks away from the draft, and what I the NFL, in a way, I think kind of shot itself in the foot where everyone should be hyping up for the draft. They made the rule changes like to eat up the headlines, particularly one
It's just
rule they
one.
want to change. Now, obviously, like, I don't know, like before we get, like, let's just address the elephant. We'll talk about the Tush Push Ban. Before we talk about that, what are your thoughts on some of the two major rule changes they made besides the potential, you know, congressional ban?
Hanging in the balance of the tush push.
Yeah.
So
So, I
the
mean,
first one being the kickoffs, where touchbacks are now moved up from the 30-yard line to the 35-yard line. We're getting further and further up the field. It was at the 20 back in like what? When did it switch from the 20 to 25? Maybe like 2013? Nah, probably like 2015, I want to say. Um,
they keep moving it up because they want to
so
increase
they want
score.
to incentivize the returns. And I'll be honest, the 35 is it's definitely far, especially if a pet like kicking it out of bounds is still only going to get you to the 40. Um, you're going to see kickers, I think, towing that line of towards the sideline to help out their coverage units because the punishment for kicking it out of bounds is only 5 yards now, as opposed to a touchback. It's really not the total end of the world. I don't hate the rule. Like, it is what it is. You're just going to see a lot less touchbacks. Even though we saw a significant drop in touchbacks last year, it did eventually get to a point where it felt like smart teams were just kicking it through the end zone. You know, the Eagles got bit by it a few times, and they were just like, you know what, kick it out of the end zone as much as possible. Like they did it a few times, and it paid off greatly as they had two huge forced fumbles on kickoffs that were massive in the playoffs. But it got to a point where if they got a lead, you know, they were just kinda kicking it through the end zone, be like, "Let's not even dare give up a big return to let something come back and bite us." We were begging
Yeah,
Elliott.
because they mentioned that the kickoff was a quote a ceremonial play where it was just going to end in a touchback most of the time, regardless.
Mhm.
And like, I don't know, Michael, if you're trying to promote player safety, you know, a lot of concussions would happen back in the day on kickoffs.
Well, I mean, they changing the rules for how the formation of the kickoff is, I think, done a lot to mitigate that. Listen, we the hypocrisy on player safety is pretty evident, but for this rule, I'll say it's fine. I think it's really gonna put a lot of kickers to the test. You're really gonna have to do a good job finding that sweet spot where you're basically having the guys kick it to catch the ball, like, inside the 5, but not in the end zone. It's hard. It's gonna be difficult
So
because
what happens if the ball, let's say the kicker has the ball drop to like the 2 and then the returner lets it roll out in the back of the end zone.
that was a touchback to the 20, if I recall. Like, that they award the kicker for being able to do that, and they'll punish the receiving team because it didn't land in the end zone, and it's like, "You didn't return the ball that didn't land in the end zone. You're getting punished. Ball's at the 20." So, you're gonna have kickers try and maybe line drives to score like a soccer play, but it's so hard, you know, that you have 70 yards to read where the ball's going to go get in front of it. I think it's just gonna put a lot of kickers and kicking teams to the test. You know, the Eagles had times struggled. We've seen, you know, with the bigger returns, a lot of teams struggling to cover kicks at a better rate. Uh, Kickers are definitely gonna have to try to get it shorter because even as a receiving team, like if you catch the ball 2 yards deep, you might as well just take the knee. Well, I'll take it at the 35. No issue there. That's a great starting field position. So it'll be an interesting adjustment for the kickers and for special teams as a whole. I'm intrigued. I don't think it's that bad. I mean, we'll see how bad and extreme that the rule gets eventually if they do keep moving it up and up and up further. But for now, I'm all right with it. That's fine.
And the other one, which was what the Eagles
Eagles
proposed,
proposal.
was that each team, regardless of what the the team that wins the coin toss in overtime does, the other team will get another shot.
Yeah, which I mean, I think we can all agree it's about time. I think that I the sudden death totally from the beginning was always dumb. Nothing dumber than a team driving to the 38-yard line, kicking a 50 some yard field goal, and the game being over just immediately. Like that's pretty ridiculous.
The Eagles used to win a lot of games, Michael, when they had David Akers, where they would get to OT. They would win the coin toss, and
Mhm.
Akers would drill like a 50-plus yard field goal,
Yeah, like
like
that's so
to win the
shady.
game. It was like, listen, when you're winning, it's great, but when like you're the loser, it's like we're really letting this game come down to winning a coin toss.
Especially in today's game with the touchback, if that still existed, it's like you're giving up what, 15 yards of offense, and now you're like going to lose because of it. Like that's absurd. But
Well, they changed the rule after the Bills lost to the Chiefs, I believe,
in
or
overtime, that's when
in
they changed it in
overtime, where if you
overtime.
kick a field goal in overtime, if you kick a field goal, you don't, when you get the ball first, you don't automatically win.
Well, no, that rule change was a while ago. When they changed, that was the first year that rule was implemented was, you remember, it was Tim Tebow on the Broncos when he hit Demaryius Thomas for the long touchdown in overtime against the Steelers. That was the first year of a touchdown wins the game in overtime, which is back in what, 2012,
Okay, 20, yeah.
2011, maybe 2012. So that was the first year of touchdown wins the game on the first overtime possession. And in 2021, the Bills Chiefs overtime game, or 2020. No, I think it was 2021. The Bills Chiefs divisional playoff game, the crazy game, 13 seconds, Chiefs tied it, whatever. They went down the opening drive in overtime, scored a touchdown, game was over. The Bills cried about that a lot, and the rule got changed. And, it should be changed. Both teams should get a possession overtime in the playoffs. And that rule to change in the regular season has been proposed before and got rejected. And the only reason it got rejected is because it was to keep it at a 15-minute period, the way that it is in the playoffs. But the NFL didn't really like that. So it's now a 10-minute period, still, like it had, like overtime in the regular season has been, but both teams are guaranteed a possession. It creates some avenues. I read that the reasoning behind it, one, they threw out the player safety reason, which, we can believe or not. But the other reason was that it's kind of like the TV networks don't want it to go that way. The TV, like they don't want a 1 o'clock game to really bleed into the 4 o'clock window too much, or a 4 o'clock game to, God forbid, bleed into the Sunday night game.
I do think, though, because Red Zone is available, that
Yeah.
sort of negates that whole argument.
Well, and I don't necessarily think you're wrong in that regard, but that's just what. Listen, I'll say this. I know local TV, they usually make the switch, but if it's like overtime of Panthers like Titans, and that's blocking my 4 o'clock Eagles game that I can't watch the first like few, I'd be pretty pissed. I'll be honest. I'd
Yeah,
be
but you
pretty
just do
steamed.
the switch over. And then the rest
Well,
of
they
America.
do, some networks do switch over. Like if you're not local, I don't think you get the switch over
Well, so it's going to be like Giants, Browns. They're
in
struggling in
overtime.
overtime, and then you miss the
The
game.
Philadelphia area will get the switch over, but if you're an Eagles fan and like, I don't know, Arizona, there's a lot of Eagles fans. If they're trying to watch Eagles Cowboys at 4 o'clock, and you're kind of getting screwed. You get my point.
You're right.
It's a little unnecessary, though, I think.
Yeah. So
But
like, yeah, but I do think here's the thing, though, is that I think the NFL. I think it's due to gambling reasons because think about it. Like like
you're
what
not,
you
you're
don't
not
think.
wrong, man. It's like, oh, you're sweating out overtime. You don't want to miss your bets for the 4 o'clock games.
Or no, like let's say like you're like because there's so much live betting that's done, that
Hmm.
like okay, let's say it's like Eagles Commanders, and they're in
Hmm.
overtime, and you're like, Commanders win the toss. Jane Daniels drives down the field. He hits Terry McLaurin for a touchdown. You know, do you know how many degenerates are going to be live betting when the Eagles get the ball back? You're going to be like, they're going to have special. If the Eagles are going to score, who's going to win? Because now here's like the drama. Now here's the drama part. Okay, let's say you get the ball first in overtime. You score a touchdown, right? What if you go for 2 and you get it? Now you're up 8. If the other team gets the ball to score a touchdown,
I
they're going to have to go for 2 as well, right?
Yeah, there's a new element of strategy now for it's very interesting for regular season overtime because playoff overtime, you'll take the ball second every single time because it doesn't matter. You won't end the game. The game won't end until both teams get a possession. If the quarter ends, and we go to another one. Like that's
Oh yeah, if the quarterback throws a pick 6, the game's over.
right. But if you like we saw in the Super Bowl between the Chiefs and the 49ers, that clock was winding down and everyone was so confused. If the Chiefs didn't score and the clock went to 0, all they were going to do was just switch sides. The Chiefs were going to have the ball at the 2-yard line, whatever it was, and they were going to keep playing. Like nothing bad was going to happen. In the regular season, though, if the clock runs out, the game's over. Like the clock runs out, clock runs out. It's either a tie, whatever it is. So I think you'll still probably want to get the ball first, unless you're really confident in your defense to get like a quick stop, because teams that are look at the Eagles, for example. What did they do against the Steelers? They killed the game on a 10-minute drive. It's a 10-minute overtime period. If the Eagles get the ball first, they're going to do their damnedest to milk as much time as possible, score a touchdown with like a minute 40 and be like, okay, here you go. Like, good luck. Like, that's what we want. You're going to see teams running like a 4-minute offense style of play where they're trying to milk the game down, minimize this to where you have as little time as possible to score a touchdown. Or to your point as well, you're going to get the strategy. If you score first, I'd almost always want to go for 2 because not for nothing. If you kick an extra point, what do you think the other team's going to do? They're probably going to go for 2 if they score a touchdown. Not many teams want to take the tie. Like if you score with 12 seconds left in overtime to tie the game, are you going to kick the extra point and be like, all right, we'll take the tie, or you're going to go for the win? You're probably going for the win.
Yeah, because think
So
about it, dude. Like, the NFL is the only sport where you could tie. Hockey
yes,
did away with ties.
yes.
So, like, dude, like, do you really like? What if a team has like 2 ties next year?
I wouldn't be surprised if you see more ties because you're just gonna like if you have teams that score first and they're like, "Oh, we're kicking the extra point," you might have teams that settle for the tie. It's gonna be I think it's definitely a good rule that both teams get guaranteed a possession. It only being 10 minutes, as I think the reasons as shambolic as they may be, I do think it adds an extra element of strategy that I'm okay with. I think I'm okay with teams having to strategize that first possession, trying to you don't want to score too fast. You want to try to put clock pressure on the other team. Um, you know, because if both teams in a 10-minute overtime period, more likely than not, both teams get one possession, it's probably going to end in a tie. Especially if both teams score, it's definitely going to end in a tie if they don't elect to, kick a if they don't elect to
Well,
go for 2 or
what if
anything
you
like
get your
that.
other possession and the clock runs out on you, so you just lose?
Well, yeah, yes. That's like the NFL's point. That's why if you get the ball first, you want to milk the clock on. So if the Eagles get the ball first, score a touchdown, go for 2 with like 2:25 to go, and the Commanders run out of time, game's over, Eagles win. They did a great job milking the clock. They ran a 7.5-minute drive to score a touchdown in the first part of the overtime there. That's you gotta give a lot of credit for that.
And not just that too, like you're assuming the opposing team's defense is going to be tired, so it's going to be really easy to run the ball or
Yeah,
even like
just milk that clock, and you're gonna get teams taking
don't go out of
timeouts.
bounds. Don't get out
Yeah.
of bounds. Stay in bounds, you know.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of strategic things behind, the decision making there.
The
I think
Eagles
it's a good element.
obviously, so the Eagles like obviously were like coming up with this rule. They were like, oh yeah, if we go to overtime, hey, let's each team get a shot. So like, if we can force a quick, I don't know, I don't know, let's say like, I don't know, like what if like, I don't know, you like kick the ball. I don't know, like what if like you kick the ball off, the other team runs it out, gets a touchdown off the kickoff, and they got to kick the ball back to you, and you get the ball back with like 9 minutes,
9 minutes left.
nine
Yeah, no,
minutes
it's
30 seconds, and like you just march down the field, score a touchdown, go for two, and win. Like I don't know.
that's a whole new element. If you get a quick score or you allow a quick score, do you really want to go for?
Like what if
That's
the
why I
Bengals?
think
Like what if the
if
Bengals in OT? Like I don't know, Jamar Chase gets wide open, catches a pass, is sprinting down
and
the
just
field,
breaks one, yeah.
and now he's thinking like, oh crap, do I like fall down at the one to try
I mean,
and
even
milk?
Saquon. What if Saquon breaks a big run on the first play of overtime? Like that's certainly plausible. I think every team that scores first in overtime should 1,000,000% go for two. I'm that's going to be like my hill to die on. That you should never kick the extra point if you score first in overtime. There's no reason to. You're just
I
putting yourself
guarantee
at
you, Greg
risk.
Olson is going to be like hammering that.
No, because there's going to be no. There's going to be. You're not. If you get it, obviously you got to get it. But it's like you get it, and now you're at no risk of losing. You can't lose now. But if you kick the extra point, it's like there's a chance there that you might not get the
Do
ball
you
back
think
and
we're going to
lose.
see way more? I think if you go
I mean,
down.
this isn't going to increase the chances of overtime. You still have to get to
Oh
overtime.
no, like this is what I think though. I think you're going to see teams that are down by 7 who get the ball back. They score the touchdown. They're going to think like, F this. Like, we need a win. Like, we can't afford to risk a
Yeah,
tie.
they're totally, man, totally. You're gonna. It'll all depend, I guess. There's gonna be if it happens late in the season, you'll have a better understanding of the standings where you're like, a tie would actually
Like, if you're
put
the
us.
Baltimore Ravens, and you're in that scenario that we're describing, aren't you thinking like, dude, I got Lamar Jackson at quarterback. He can't. Like, I trust him to just
Just get in
stretch,
the end
run it
zone,
out, and to pick up the
do
2 point
something.
conversion.
You'd look at though when you get to the late in the season and you see the clinching scenarios start rolling out. What do you see a lot? Win or tie, win or tie, win or tie. And it's like we always throw out that or ties because ties rarely happen. But now, if you get in that opportunity, teams might be like, listen, if we tie here, we'll be in like control of our own destiny where we just got to win the next two games and we're in. Where if we win, it's that same way. But if we lose, now it's like we're going to need to win and get some help later. So you know what? Let's just take the tie and we'll go on to, you know, control our own destiny. It's interesting. It's a good
All
rule.
right, yeah,
We
all
spent a lot
right,
of time talking
all
about
right,
two
all right.
pretty
All
basic
right.
rules.
Well, no, like they're worth talking about. Let's just all right. Let's just
They
talk
were,
about it.
but
Let's just talk about
the tush
the
push. So
push
the
push ban. I'm going to
official,
try and be as unbiased as I possibly can to talk about this.
I mean, I'm not going to promise that. The ESPN tush push article was pretty exciting. Like it was pretty interesting to see some of the insider scoops about it. So I guess what are the key points of it? I guess we should start with the language of the rule and how that's probably the biggest reason why there wasn't more momentum towards actually banning it because the way the rule is written now is atrocious. So the proposal prohibits an offensive player from pushing a teammate who was lined up directly behind the snapper and receives the snap immediately at the snap. What does that mean? What does that mean? That is solely like, okay, this play is banned to have two guys lining up behind the quarterback and as soon as the ball snapped, pushing him. But the word immediately. So does that mean if the Eagles want to run the tush push, Jalen takes the snap, you have like Saquon and Goddard or AJ Brown, whoever's
Hesitate for
pushing,
2 seconds, then
to
push it.
sit there and be like, all right, one Mississippi, two Mississippi, go, and now we're gonna push them because I don't think that's immediately. Is that
It's to
immediately
give
to you?
the defense like almost a head start
Where it's like, okay, but I'm still going to push them in like a second.
Yes, that's what it basically.
Or
So
is it like a
Michael,
formation-based thing where you can't line up there and push? So now those two
yeah,
guys
but
are going to be
but in
behind,
that
like,
formation, that's typically when teams try to do a kneel down or a spike.
yeah,
They they purposefully have guys lined up there in case of a fumble.
right.
So
It's like you're going to have guys now formation-wise, instead of being right on Jalen's back as the ball snapped, like maybe like they got to take 3 steps before the push. Like, you get what I'm saying here. It's ridiculous the way that rule's written, where you're not actually banning anything than the specific way that the Eagles have been running it. Like, the Eagles would clearly be able to find a
well,
way around that.
this is what I feel like. Why this there's I think the question is why does the NFL why do a lot of these teams want to play banned? Like, let's not talk about it from like a fan perspective where it's like they want to ban it because they can't stop it, which at the end of
It's
the
like
day,
true.
that's the reason, right?
Yes, the
That
Eagles are
really
too
is
good
the
at it.
reason. And I'm
Yeah.
sure like Sean McVay was like throwing crap when Raheem Morris came out. Oh, I want to ban because we can't stop it. Because that's not the political answer.
No, because McVay has enough like pride as a coach, as do a lot of NFL coaches have come out and said, like D'Amico Ryans, Mike Vrabel, Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn. I'm sure Ben Johnson feels the same way. Like, all the smart coaches that aren't like babies, like perhaps Kyle Shanahan. I'm very curious to see what Kyle Shanahan thought about this whole thing. Um, they are not in the business of punishing a team for being really, really good at something, because a lot of those coaches, they love to push the limits on the rules. They love to do things that are fairly within the scope and are allowed because they're good
You
at it
really,
and they
well,
execute it really
exactly,
well.
because well, Vrabel paid for Bill Belichick, so like you're going to talk about stretching the rules as much as humanly possible.
But I mean, look at,
Like, yeah,
the way the Rams and the Dolphins run motion, where guys are really kind of starting to turn upfield before the ball's snapped, but
that's
it's
the point
allowed.
I'm getting at. The reason
Yeah,
why I feel like, because I believe the Dolphins are one of the teams that are opposing it. It's sour grapes that they're Fugazi, like arena football, CFL, BS motion. Which, by the way, like
it's illegal in the NFL. It
it's
just is.
illegal. It got declared illegal, and like in the case of the Dolphins and the Niners, their offenses looked like shit. Pardon my language this year, because their Fugazi like motion didn't work,
Yeah,
got
they weren't having as
banned.
much success.
So it's not as fair. So it's basically like, well, why do the Eagles get to do their tush push?
Yeah,
That's what it comes down to, Michael. It's basically grown men acting like children. That is
yeah,
what this comes down to.
yeah.
Like,
It's
and Sean McDermott. By the way, Elliot Shore Parks probably like the highlight of his journalistic career. I would say interview like first off, Sean. When I saw that Sean McDermott interview where he's like talking about wanting to get banned, citing player safety, and Elliot saying, "Well, there's no data that to back up what you're saying, man." And he's like,
and then
"Well,
he's like, "Well, it's the prospective injury. Like, if they're trying to get out in front of it."
and then he asked him point blank, so if the ban doesn't go through, are you still going to run the play?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Elliot cooked right there, and he was like, "Well, we run a variation of it." And it's like, okay, like, not for nothing, the Packers run it. Why we act like the Packers don't run it? They do run it. They've ran it against the Eagles multiple times. They run it. They just don't run it with Jordan Love. They run it with Tucker Kraft. Well, so like, what you care? I'm sure they do care about Jordan Love's health more than Tucker Kraft's, but it if you think it's such a dangerous play, then why are you running it at all then? They run it a lot, the Packers. I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers were one of the top 5 teams that run it the most. Obviously, the Eagles and the Bills are at the top, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers are up there, because I like, I'm not even kidding. When I think about who runs it the next most besides the Eagles and the Bills, my mind immediately goes to the Packers. I vivid know the same play they run. They're short yardage. Jordan Love is in shotgun, motions Kraft over, who runs under, takes the snap, and they push. I've seen it happen countless times. It's just what they do. So the
Yeah,
injury argument,
I'm pretty sure you and I looked at each other in that Packer playoff game, and we were like, "Oh shoot, maybe like we should do that with like
maybe
Goddard
to catch him off guard or something.
to
But
catch him off guard as a kind of a cool thing or something." Like, you know what I mean? Like we weren't like, "Oh my god, it's a rugby
no,
play! Oh my god!"
no, it's something like you look at the injury thing. And is there injury risk? There's as much injury risk on a tush push as there is on any dive play. Any play where you give it to the fullback and he just dives into the back of the offensive lineman, or a running back goes straight up the middle, it's the same sort of risk. I don't really understand. And there's this false assumption. I can't think of a common misconception that it is illegal for a defensive team to push the defensive lineman from the back, and that is untrue. The only plays you are not allowed to do that on are special teams, and the only reason you're not allowed to do that on special teams is because the long snapper has his head down, not like down like the centers have it or offensive linemen, but down looking between his legs because he is looking where to snap the football. It is illegal to do that because they don't want someone's head to get like rolled up on like a roly poly because their head's down. So that's why it's illegal on special teams and field goals and whatnot. It is not illegal for a linebacker to get behind defensive linemen and push. They are very much allowed to do that. The reason why it's not that successful in that sort of play is because they don't know the snap count. Just like any other offensive or defensive play, the offense has the advantage of they know when the ball's getting snapped. The defense doesn't. That's just kind of the way the sport goes. So, yeah, they're going to have the advantage to fire off the ball, all that sort of stuff. And that's what makes it so hard to stop. The real truth is on why it's hard to stop is not because of the pushing, and it's more that the Eagles get a really good jump off the snap of the ball to be able to get that initial drive, and they're able to get there. I don't know. It's the injury issue is a total excuse, and if they really, really wanted to be serious about it, because the other argument they make is the optics of it. It doesn't really look like a football play, which what the hell does that mean either? Jeffrey Lurie said it great. He said, the forward pass was considered something that didn't look like a football play either. Should that have never been allowed? Like, it's not looking like a football play. I don't think it looks like a football play when the Chiefs run that little pirouette spin in the backfield before they run out for a motion, or they run a ring around the rosy before they all sprint to their formation. Like, I don't think that really looks like a football play. Should that be banned? I don't think it's a football play watching Jared Goff fake trip over his own feet and then throw it to an offensive lineman or something. To me, that doesn't really look like a football play. A screen pass. What is that? Offensive lineman going out and hitting
You know
cornerbacks and
what?
D-backs?
My buddy Gino and I were tweeting back and forth about that, what you're saying. And I was just joking around. I'm like, you know, kneeling the ball down to end the game. Like I said, what are we, dirty Frenchmen? We're just surrendering.
Yeah.
No,
Like, I mean,
surrender. Get rid of
I
kneel
don't think
downs. Because actually was a thing. They wanted to ban kneeling the ball down to ice the game. That was
I mean,
actually
I
a thing
don't
that had to
think
be added to, and like this and the spike to stop the clock. That was added to the rule book in 1993 because people thought that that should have been intentional grounding. Because if you
yeah,
think about it, it kind of is.
it is. There's no receiver in the area. You're within the tackle box, and the only way around that is you have to spike it right away. You can't take a snap and be like, I want to spike it now. Like, you got to do it right away. That's the rule. Um, is punting really a football play? You're giving the ball to the other team.
What about when a
It doesn't feel
defensive
like it.
lineman swats a football down that's in the air? What's this, volleyball?
Yeah, volleyball, the
I'm
basketball, the
like, well,
blocking a pass. Like,
this is so. I'm reading about so they're not going to. They didn't get enough votes to ban it, but the commissioner wants it banned. So when the commissioner, you
once a
know,
rule change, it
once a rule
usually goes
change,
through.
and if he doesn't get it, then he's probably not going to be the commissioner much longer because that tells you
Yeah,
maybe that nobody respects his power.
The tush push is clearly on its way out. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't think it's going to be banned this offseason, to be honest. I don't think they're going to cook up a different verbiage of the rule by May that's going to be enough to sway
Well, you just
people.
run a
But
regular quarterback sneak.
that also true. The Eagles are going to be
They're
fine.
not
Like
banning the
honestly,
quarterback sneak. They're banning pushing the guy on the quarterback sneak,
yeah.
which
Which like if you know a quarterback sneak's coming, I'm sorry, but the injury risk is the exact same. Just because there's a couple more guys pushing the quarterback does not affect the injury risk that they're so saying. Like Sean McDermott very clearly like it's the angle at which the players are at and then the trauma to the head. Okay, that happens because everyone knows it's coming. They're lined up, everyone's waiting for it. It's coming. Everyone knows the play is happening. So here we go. 4th and 1. The Eagles are lining up in the post tush push era, and Jalen Hurts is under center, and he's got his legs ready to go for a sneak. Do we not think it's the same angle of the head and the head's going to be down? It's the same injury risk. So now we should just probably ban all quarterback sneaks, honestly. But they won't do that because that's not the point. They think the pushing is the bad thing. So if that's the bad thing, let's go back to pre 2004 and ban all pushing. So no more, oh, a player gets held up at the 8-yard line and here comes the offensive line pushing the pile and he gets into the end zone and everyone freaks out and goes and loses their minds. Or, you know, a receiver takes a screen pass, is getting 7 yards, and here comes three offensive linemen to push him and a receiver, and you get an extra 5 and it's a first down. Like those sort of things are going to be outlawed, and you got to strictly enforce that. You need to be strict. So I think that's probably the best angle that they're going to have to be able to ban it, which is to push all pushing, push every out, like ban all types of pushing. And I think they might try that. Like you said, when the commissioner wants something
Michael, I will
banned,
bet you any amount of money when the Bills, Josh Allen's going to be scrambling, and his O lineman, like in the open, are going to push him in the end zone, and they're not going to penalize it.
I wouldn't be surprised. But like you said, when the commissioner wants something banned, it usually happens. I wouldn't be surprised if Roger Goodell is with the rules committee, like trying to write up a rule. Because for every guy like Nick Sirianni, like all the Eagles tree, Kellen Moore, Jonathan Gannon, and Shane Steichen, and for every Mike Vrabel and Kevin Stefanski and D'Amico Ryans, Dan Campbell, those are all the guys that voted against it because they don't feel comfortable banning a play. Even Sean McVay, I'll say, they don't feel comfortable banning a play just because a team's really good at it. And that's all how they feel about it. They think that this ban is being done because the Eagles are really good at it and they don't feel comfortable doing that. And that's awesome. Those guys are not going to change their vote. Truly. Those are not going to be the ones that change. The ones that are going to change are the ones that looked at the rule, didn't like how it was written, and was like, this can easily be worked around. There's no point in it being enforced or being written in if this is how it's going to be written in. Because, like we said, you can have what? Saquon sit back there, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and now he's going to go push. And now what? Like, that's not immediate. I don't think that's immediate. Um, those are the type of people in this vote that the pro ban people are trying to flip. They're trying to flip the people that didn't like the language of the rule. And if it's rewritten in a certain way to kind of really guarantee that it can't be run in any sort of fashion, then it's going to get banned. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to be banned this year. Maybe they'll figure out something to ban it next year. I guess we will. We will be seeing. It really is very soft. I think it's something that is very, very soft on the part of everyone
Yeah.
against it. So
I do
we'll
want to
see.
talk about one last thing in regards to this, then we'll move on to baseball. I want to just give you a quote from Adam Schefter, who, look, I've been critical of Adam Schefter. I said he was like,
Yeah, he's a rat for sure.
he's a rat, but this is like the top NFL reporter, maybe like the most famous, biggest reporter in pro sports right now. Now that
Well, it's
Woj,
also in terms of having the ear of, or everyone has his ear, like within the NFL. Like
I'm gonna read you this quote.
Mhm.
Quote, I believe there are people in the league that are jealous of the Eagles' success. I believe there are people that can't duplicate the Eagles' success. I believe the commissioner and others don't like the play, and I believe the play is going to go away. I'm not telling you it's right. I didn't think it was going to go this way. I didn't think it was going to happen, but it gathered up momentum, and I believe those people have the support of the commissioner. I don't know how he is going to do it, but he's going to find the 8 votes he needs to go get the 24 votes against the Tush Push. I'm just telling you that's what's going to happen. So what's basically going to happen is, of those 8 teams he needs, if some of those teams need a new stadium, if they need something, there's some basically almost like Congress, like, hey, I need you to vote on this bill, so I'll make sure to give like your state extra money, basically.
Yeah, no, there's definitely going to be some lobbying going on to get. Because what was it? It was an even split. Was it 16 voted to ban,
Michael,
16 voted to
let's
keep
just be
it?
realistic here. It's because
They don't like how
John
it looks.
well, no, it's John Mara who owns the Giants. I think he owns the building the NFL offices are in.
Wow. I think a part of it is we know they don't love the Eagles. We know there's anti-Eagles bias for sure.
Yeah, because now the three, like 2 of the most influential owners are the Eagles' rivals, and
Right.
they're just sick of being embarrassed
Yeah.
on national
You
television.
take you take that, and then you also take they don't they look at the play, and I think they view it as an automatic first down or an automatic give the whatever the Eagles want, and it's just it reeks of jealousy, like we all say. Like, here's the thing: the Eagles are what, like 82% success rate on the tush push, which is a really high number. It's very hard for any play in football to be successful 80+% of the time. It's not like the league is 80+% of the time successful. Like, you want to talk about banning something because it's too like broken, too unfair. That is one thing. That is something that I can get behind. If, like, for example, let's say the NFL, it was legal to have like the CFL style motion where receivers could have like a running
You
head
give
start
Tyreek
before the
Hill
ball.
a 5-yard head start to run a go
To
route in the
start
backfield.
sprinting. Yeah, he's going to cook everybody. But imagine everyone had that. AJ Brown be running past everybody. Jamar Chase be running past everybody. Every team would have guys running wide open, and it'd be like, man, on go routes that have the head start to it, dude, people are the whole league is like at 75% success rate hitting a big play on that. Then the league would be like, you know what? That's unfair. It's an unfair advantage. It needs to go. It's something that needs to be banned because the entire league is abusing it to the fact where it's ruining the integrity and the balance of play in the sport. If the tush push was ran league wide, which everyone tries, by the way, if it was ran league wide and it was successful on a league scale of about 80% plus, I would honestly, at that point, I would understand banning it because it would be like a cheat code that everybody is abusing and everybody's succeeding on. It's unfair to the defense that no matter what you do, when the other team lines up in that sort of spot and is going to run the tush push, there's almost nothing you can do to stop it. But the truth is it's not that easy. That not everybody is as successful as the Eagles are because the Eagles have spent countless time practicing it. They found the right player personnel for it, and they've perfected it. Jeffrey Lurie said they've spent so much time and resources and energy and researching into ensuring how to make this as dominant as a play as the Eagles have gotten it to, that they deserve to keep it. It's not being abused league wide. It's being tried to be abused league wide, and teams aren't seeing the same success. So it's not really an unfair advantage. It's just something the Eagles are great at.
You think it's hilarious that when McDermott was going off about it, that like it just basically shows that like the people pushing this ban, they're just soft.
It's disingenuous.
Like
The
the Packers
reasons
are
are
pushing it, right?
disingenuous.
We said this before about the Green Bay Packers, and you saw like LaFleur, he's complaining about it. Like, dude, maybe not get your ass beat. Fit like your team is so goddamn soft. In every big game you play, you guys get your asses handed to you from a physical standpoint. It's sort of like, oh, we can't match it, so let's make the game like softer.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I just think a lot of the reasons are disingenuous. Like if the Bills, they went what, 1 for 5 on the tush push in the AFC Championship game against Kansas City. If they were successful with it, then we would have seen Sean McDermott. I don't think we would have seen him so hell bent on banning it if he was
Oh,
that
is he?
successful
Oh, so
with it.
he's his sort of things like we failed to convert it, so it's the tush
I
push
think that's like
fault,
part of the reason.
not
We weren't as
my fault as a coach because I'm using 9/11 to try to motivate my
yeah,
players.
well, that also I think plays a role. But yeah, so that conversation got tabled till May. Um, we will be seeing in about a month what takes place because of that. But on to baseball. Baseball is here, full swing, third series of the year. Phillies coming off an electric victory on Friday night on Apple TV against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Undefeated no more. It's a shame the announcers were doing everything they could to jinx that game for the Phils. They were like, the Dodgers gone 65 straight games without being shut out, and it's like they were begging them to score a run. And obviously, Tommy Edman hits the
Well,
two-run homer in the
dude, this
ninth.
is like, dude, I think they're trying to make this like Apple TV games like not Monday night. Like, I think like not like Sunday night football. Like that's supposed to be like their event game.
No, it's definitely one of the event games that they got. I mean, the Apple TV pays a lot of money to get those games, and they lose a lot of money. Apple as a company loses a lot of money on Apple TV. So interesting, but um, great game. Jesus Luzardo was spectacular. 7 shutout innings, 8 strikeouts. Made Otani look like a fool. Made Betts look like a fool. Made a lot of good hitters look very bad.
Dude,
He was about as dominant as he could have been.
dude,
It was
dude,
perfect.
I'll say this, man. A couple years ago, I was like, man, the Phillies could like really use a good left-handed starting pitcher. It's looking very apparent to me, not that the
They got
Phillies
like 3 of
have
them.
have right now, like, yeah, three of them, right? As with
Yeah,
when
and Ranger
Rangers
getting healthy.
healthy, they'd have three of them.
Yeah,
And
it's shades of, that 09, when Cliff Lee got here, where you had Hamels and Lee, and it was just like 2 nasty lefties. Um, it's good, man. The rotation is awesome. Even Taiwan chipped in with a 6-inning scoreless, really, really nice performance on Thursday against Colorado.
yeah, he was giving up some pretty hard contact earlier in the game, and then he settled in.
He really settled in. He was taking advantage of some. It's a really bad Rockies team, and he was taking advantage of them chasing, which is good. Like when you're facing a bad team, you want to fill the strike zone, and he was filling the strike zone. But when you have 2 strikes, especially when you know a team is chasing and they're not be able to, lay off pitches, it's good to make sure that it's good to abuse that. It's good to push the limits and make them chase as opposed to giving them a good 2-strike pitch to hit. So he gave up some long outs, but for a guy that's your 6th starter, I guess, potentially 7th as the season moves on, if that's the sort of performances that you can get every now and again, there's no reason for anyone to complain. And I'll say I couldn't have been happier for him. He got booed on opening day when they were announcing the lineup or announcing the players, and I thought that was wrong. You we talk about the Philly fan reputation on this podcast a decent bit, and it's usually like, oh, they get a bad rap, but it's stuff like that as to like why they have the reputation that we have. Where if you're going to be up there booing Taiwan Walker on the home opener when they're just announcing the rosters, that's awful. That's not nice. That's not cool. Um, it definitely. I was in the crowd. I was like, "Are you?" I was uncomfortable. I was a little upset. I was like, "Guys, like, what are we doing here? Booing Taiwan there." So I was very happy for him that he was able to kind of stick it to everybody with a dominant six scoreless against the Rockies. It was very, very good for him. Shout out Taiwan.
I will. So I do, and there's one guy I really want to shout out before we kind of talk about like the negatives, I guess.
Hmm.
So Kyle Schwarber, listen, man, we talk about clutch athletes in Philadelphia. No one ever talks about Kyle Schwarber as a clutch athlete. And it's really a shame because he's probably on the Phillies, you know, one of those clutch guys that I can remember recent, like over the
I mean,
last 10,
he's
15
just
years.
been he's just your second best hitter, and he's been that for like
A
almost
while.
every year since he's gotten here. Like he's just really damn good. He's a very, very good baseball player, just straight up. Is a great hitter, and I'm very, very grateful to have him on the team. He's just going to show up and have good at bats pretty consistently, and that's all you can really sort of ask for. And on top of that, he's hitting the ball. He hits the ball places I just never really seen the ball land. Sometimes, that home run he hit on, what was it, Thursday,
Thursday.
where it was a pitch that was up and away, and he pulled it like over the bullpens. I just that was unbelievable. He really is a freak.
And I know like he's in like a contract year, but like they need to re-sign him. This is like just 4 years, $100 million. Just do it. Like this
Hmm.
is like, you know, it's just disgusting when you're like watching them play the Dodgers and you see like their fans are like, "Oh, let's just sign Schwarber to be our DH or have him
Hmm.
like play left field. Like, who cares? Just give him a deferred you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
just like Kyle Schwarber to me, like before he got to the Phillies, like Kyle Schwarber was like a solid player on the Cubs, and he was a journeyman pretty much. Like after that, like he
He was
played.
having success wherever, like he had, obviously that nuclear season in Washington before he got traded to the Red Sox. He's always been known as a playoff performer, though. I think in his major league career, he's like the only player to homer in every possible round of the playoffs. Just a really weird, cool stat that he has.
But
It's
to me, like he's really, if you look at like guys on the Phillies that have put in the work, like to be better, like
Mhm.
obviously, like we'll talk about some of the negatives, but like he's like he lost weight, but it looked like he lost a lot of weight last year. It affected his power because I think he lost muscle, but it looks like he put muscle on without bulking.
Yeah,
So
no, he definitely
he's
he looks
like he's like
he's a great
Michael,
base runner. Like he
like
just
I'm confident that he can hit 50 home runs.
That would be awesome, especially because I think the balls are juiced this year too. So, um,
Well, maybe juice for some and not others.
the
The
Yankees.
Cincinnati Reds could use some of those juiced baseballs the last
Yeah,
couple.
we'll get into the Reds in a second. I still want to talk about the Phils a little bit though, I guess, because
Oh
we
yeah,
opened up with them.
so I guess
You
let's
look
talk
at
about the negatives. So I love that this team late in games can scratch runs and get runs across the plate. However,
you
they
need to hit a starter.
you need to get after these, and some of the starters, bro, they're going against that are cooking the offense. Like, okay, Herman Marquez. Okay.
Yeah, he hasn't been good since
Well,
2018.
he's been injured, but when he was healthy, he was an all-star.
Yeah, but that's still we're looking at almost 8 years ago now.
Okay, I'm like, all right, like the guy has. In other words, like, no, he's got stuff. It's just like,
Yeah, I mean
okay, you
Herman
struggle
Marquez has
against
been.
him. All right, maybe that's a little justifiable, right? Okay, like, oh man, like I don't know, man. Like, what if he's like the Chris Sale this year? Where he just, he's been
Listen,
hurt.
they've played 7 games and they faced, I would say, two good pitchers, and then maybe two guys that were expecting to be better or at least used to be good, and then three like pretty brutal ones, and they've hit none of them. So they've hit
Well, when
zero.
Anthony Sensatella you're flailing at the plate against Anthony
He's
Sendatella.
he's I mean, but he's got some very interesting stuff because what uh he's thrown like 14 innings or something, 13 innings, and has allowed 19 hits but no runs throughout his 2 starts. Really something
Bizarre.
miraculous. Yeah. Um, but they need to hit starters, and I think they will.
I think they're.
Interesting.
I think they're going to hit starters. I think they're going to hit today.
Yeah, I think
Personally,
today's a good matchup with Sasaki. Clearly, Sasaki probably could benefit from being sent down to AAA. He does have options, and I think the Dodgers would be wise to use one at least if once one of their guys gets healthy, just because, especially if today doesn't go well for him, it's someone I think is worth being patient with. But I want to look at the Phillies as, I guess, a whole on the offensive side. They the Kevin Long's article came out and they were like, we can't be chasing, we got to put the ball in play more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're like, yeah, we'll believe it when we see it.
they're cutting significantly down on the strikeouts,
I
which
was
is
just
good.
about to say, we have been seeing, you take away opening day, which like it's hard to take away opening
I mean,
day.
I've got buddies who are literally like taking the opposing team starting pitcher for AKs and betting like every game.
Yeah, like that's ludicrous. You take away opening day, which again, hard to take that away. That was a disaster. But you take away opening day, they have the league's best strikeout rate. That's wonderful. They're not chasing as much. Some guys too are clearly not chasing as much. Nick Castellanos is the one I'm thinking of where he's got more walks than strikeouts this year through 7 games. And again, it's only 7 games, but that has never been something that's been his MO for any really extended stretch of time. He's never been a guy to strike to he's not really just a guy that walks at all, let alone, you know, at a high rate. So the fact that he has more walks than strikeouts to me, cutting your strikeouts out a lot. They're aware and they made it a point to just put the ball in play. You're not always going to get a hit, obviously, but they're making a conscious effort to put the ball in play more, do some of the small things correctly, and so far it's been showing up in the first 7 games. Trey Turner, I want to give him a little shout out for yesterday. Well, that was the most like 2019 Trey I've seen him since he's gotten here, where ground ball down the line double, reading the pitcher beautifully to get an early jump on a steal. He doesn't pitch it, he throws it and he throws it away and you create a run for it. And it's like that is the chaos that Trey Turner needs to be creating on a regular basis. That was a humongous part of his appeal, a guy that gets on base and causes problems for the other team. That was the definition of it. But you're seeing them Nick Castellanos came up on Wednesday, I think it was, and run after a double ahead of him from Kepler or whoever it was, I forget. He grounds one to the right side to move the runner up to third, and it's like they're doing the smart baseball things that has been what the teams against them have been doing to beat them in the playoffs. And when it matters, you look at what the Mets did last year, where they would never strike out. They weren't dying. They were just putting balls in play. The Diamondbacks, they weren't striking
Yeah,
out,
man.
all
I
that
mean,
sort of
dude,
stuff.
it's just a mathematical and empirical fact in baseball. The
Hmm.
strikeout is the worst possible out, like
Yeah.
individual out you can make. Now, obviously, and I say individual out because obviously, you know, if you have the bases loaded, obviously you'd
Hmm.
rather strike out versus hitting into a double play.
Yeah.
However, you know, you don't have the bases loaded all the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
you know? And listen, them striking out with the bases loaded, 3 straight guys, I think they're this new approach. It's going to take time, but you're already seeing like some of the benefits of it.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like they did that. They only struck out 4 times that entire game, and they 3 of them just happened to come at like the worst time ever. It's not like that was their ninth, 10th, and 11th strikeouts of the game as a team. Like, no, that was actually their second, third, and fourth strikeouts of the game. It just came at a horrible time. So, it's baseball. It's very frustrating as a sport, but they're just the approach has clearly been
What,
better
what
for some
and
guys.
so there's one negative I want to talk about before we talk about the rest of like baseball, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. We'll wrap up the show today. So the last couple days, the ninth inning has been an absolute sweat.
There's
Now,
one guy I'm not worried about Alvarado, to be completely
I'm not
honest with
worried about
you.
Alvarado either. I'm just annoyed. This is where I'm annoyed is the and I know you feel differently about this. I'm just have the closer pitch the ninth inning. Just like to me, it's like I listen, dude. I love all the baseball numbers. You know me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like your dad, where it's like you know how your dad is, right?
Yes.
We know how your dad is. I'm not. This is like, dude. Like to me, I feel like if everyone in the bullpen has like a role and they know what
Mm-hmm.
their job is, and they all just have to focus on their job, it minimizes the pressure of the situation. I think they are in.
I don't disagree, but at the same time, they're on like year 4 of not having a designated closer, especially last year where they did not. And their bullpen was like the best it's been in almost team history, the way it was during the regular season. And in the playoffs, it just kind of everything fell apart. But like you had 3 guys in the bullpen last year with sub 2 ERAs between Kerkering, Strom, and Hoffman. I think you just kind of roll it with how it rolls. I don't think a guy not being designated for the ninth or whoever, I don't think that's affecting the performance sometimes because Alvarado will go out there, whether it's the ninth, eighth, seventh. Some days, if his command is just a little off, like it's just going to be off, whether it's the eighth or the seventh or the ninth. If it's off, it's off, and it's just one of those days. I'm not worried about those 3. I'm not worried about Kerkering, Alvarado, or Strom at all. Strom's velocity tells me he's still in, like, spring training mode basically because
Because he was hurt in the spring
he was
training.
banged up. So he's still his velocity's a bit down, but his accuracy and his command is pretty good, so I'm not, like, worried. Like, yesterday, went up there against Ohtani and stuff uh and was throwing in like the 90s or whatever and was getting some good swing and misses. And it's just like it's fine. Like he
But
walked him,
Michael,
but or gave up a hit. But
Michael, though the last two playoff exits the Phillies have suffered in those series, a big contributing factor was, you know, end of the game couldn't get close it out, and to me, like,
yeah,
and look, I'm not, and like I think to me, I think it's weird that Rob Thompson does this when he was like a Yankee for like 8,000 years, and like
mhm.
he watched Mariano Rivera, was
Oh, I think he would
the
say we
most
don't
dominant
have.
the most dominant closer of all time, and he's not thinking like,
I mean, I
I'm
think he
not.
would say we don't have Mariano Rivera on the team.
Well, of course you don't have Mariano, but like, like I don't know, like
Like,
to
who do you want
me,
the closer to be then?
like I want. So this is my thing.
If you had to pick one of the
I
4
want
guys,
I want the opposing team to get in their heads at the end of the game, like, oh crap, man, like we gotta, like, dude, we gotta deal with Kerkering in like the eighth, throwing that like wicked slider, had to chase that crap, and then we gotta go the ninth, had to deal with Alvarado, like throwing 102-mile-per-hour
does it
sinkers at the hands.
does it
You know,
matter though, like the order of which that comes in? I don't know if it
I think
does.
it does because I want these guys. Because think about it, Michael. What did the Phillies do against the Mets when they were just like flailing at everything? What were they doing? They were
Well, they were
overthinking,
pressing, but I mean, that's their
overthinking.
own issues. I feel like that's less to do with, like, they knew Edwin Diaz was coming versus, like, they just couldn't they were just having bad at bats. Last night isn't a sweat if Kerkering or Alvarado are available. Like, it just isn't. Like, you had to
Which,
throw
yeah.
Romano.
So listen, like first, so you
Jordan
said
Rom the worry I have right now is Jordan Romano. Like, that's just a general. worry
I
where
call him Lil Dicky because he looks like
he
Lil
he
Dicky.
does look like Lil Dicky. He can't be bad. I don't know, like, he just kinda needs to be good. The velocity was, like, in a fine range. It wasn't where I want it to be, which is that, like,
Yeah,
97. It
this
was more
is
that
the Jordan
95.
Romano. So, man, I should have known this was a red flag when he wants to be called Jordan Romano and not Jordan Romano.
I
It's
mean, is that him or is that his parents?
no, it's sort of like the whole like, you know.
Yeah.
Well, this is my thing with Jordan Romano. I was excited for the move. I'm not going to be like one of those people that was like,
Mhm.
F Jordan Romano. And like, listen, the whole like Jeff Hoffman elbow could explode any moment. Did
Or
not
shoulder,
exact
whatever it is.
or shoulder that didn't exactly. I wasn't exactly excited when I read that because I wanted them to keep
Mm,
Jeff Hoffman. I wanted like
yeah.
let Estevez go and then keep Hoffman. Like that was
We
clear.
all wanted to keep Jeff, but
And now it's like, but now he's like, he's on the Blue Jays and he's pitching really well. And like
mhm,
the basically it came down to the Phillies didn't want to give him a more than a 1 year deal. So they
mhm.
opted to sign Jordan Romano, and the Blue Jays, who developed Jordan Romano into a dominant pitcher, were like, nah, yeah, we don't want him anymore.
It
He's
was
cooked.
they were worried about the injury concern. I like, is his struggles injury related, or is it just, like, he's not pitching as well? Because Jordan Romano.
He can't throw strikes. I mean that I don't know if that's injuries, but he just doesn't throw his velocity and the movement on his pitches look like it did in
It
Toronto.
just his command's off, but it's like Jordan Romano, he's got some of the most saves in baseball since,
Yeah, but
like,
I
2020
think
or
he's
whatever.
Michael. I think he's cooked. I think he's just
Mhm.
mentally cooked. I don't think he. I think when you look at this, you saw it with Bryce a lot too. Like you could tell Bryce is very much more serious than he's been,
The
and
whole team's very serious, yeah.
Kyle Schwarber, like the leaders of the team are more serious. And I think if you look at Jordan Romano, like bro, like being a fourth place merchant reliever on the Blue Jays, where frankly, everyone that's a hockey obsessed town. You're not like there's no real pressure to succeed in Toronto. Now you're coming to Philly with the reputation of you're an all star closer. I think it could be he doesn't trust his stuff. And I think it's the pressure. I'm not blaming the fans, by the way. It's just
No, I think with Romano, because listen, you're gonna have to you have 3 guys that are good and you can trust. You need Romano to be in that group, and then you're gonna need, like, 1 more guy to pop into a reliable arm, whether it's Jose Ruiz, whether it's Carlos Hernandez, whoever it is. You need 1 more guy. I think Romano, for the time being, has gotta be the priority of, like, "Alright, we need to get this guy right." You gotta start I think you gotta ease him in a little bit, with some lower leverage situations, pitching him when you have a 3-4 run lead, but in, like, the 6th inning, it's not to close out the game, or in the 7th inning as the first guy. And, like, I get it. You gotta really toe the line trying to win games and then trying to fix guys up and stuff, and I think he's just a guy that could use some lower leverage situations to get himself in a position to feel more confident when it's time to come and throw some bigger innings in a later part of the season. I think that if he's going to be a little bit off in the ninth inning, it's a risk. It's not like he is good enough where even in Atlanta and Boston, when Craig Kimbrell was at the peak of his powers, he was still like a heart attack. Like it was still,
a sweat.
Cardiac Craig was his nickname or whatever when he was in Boston. And I think I think it's worth pushing him in situations where it's like, okay, lower leverage, we got a 5-run lead or we're down 5 and it's like I just want you to have a good outing. Like just give me a good outing. And you get some good outings that stack up in a row. We know how much baseball is a confidence-driven sport. It it can definitely, I think, play a role and you know, make him feel better, make everyone feel more confident in it and be something that is viable moving forward. Because I think if he is what we're hoping and what the Phillies were hoping when they signed him, it's a huge, very different outlook on the rest of the bullpen because we know about Kirkland, we know Alvarado, and we're feeling like Strom's getting himself back up again, but you can definitely be a little worried with Romano for sure. But again, last night being what it was, a lot of it, Kirkring wasn't available. Alvarado wasn't available. They both had thrown, I think, back-to-back days in the Colorado series. So they could, you're not going to pitch relievers 3, 4 days in a row. So they're both going to be available today, which is pretty massive.
So before we move on to the rest of baseball, so I know, remember how you used to freaking hate Yadier Molina because
Mhm,
everyone would just glaze him for his defense and he could never hit?
mhm.
Well, JT Realmuto right now, his defense is incredible, and he literally can't hit water if he fell out of a boat right now. All
Shout
he
out
can get
JT,
is
man.
singles.
Yeah,
And
JT's
that triple
power.
was a fugazi. That should have been an error.
He did hit a foul home run yesterday, which was pretty nice. It was close. But
Oh,
his
wow. Foul
offense.
home runs. Oh, man.
Listen, his we're in a spot with JT where he probably shouldn't bat higher than 8th and, like, definitely not higher than 7th kinda ever, and that's fine. I'm not really
He's
sure
kind of
what
the
people.
ideal ninth hitter if you want to think about a guy with speed who can possibly get on base and then, like,
Sure, like,
Schwarber
bottom of the
hits a
lineup.
rocket into the gap and he can score from
Right,
first.
like, bottom 3rd of the lineup. I'm not really sure what people are expecting at this point from a 34-year-old catcher. It's rare enough to have a good hitting catcher at age 28, 29, let alone 34. So if JT is gonna put most of his skill and most of his energy into being as good of a defensive catcher as he could possibly be, by all means, because last night he essentially, I don't want to say single-handedly won you the game, but was a humongous reason why you won last night. He took a lot of pressure off some pitchers who were maybe struggling a little bit. Strom walks Otani, they pull him for Jose Ruiz to face Mookie Betts because you didn't, they wanted Romano for the ninth. And surprisingly, they send Otani and or he gives up a hit to Otani, sorry. Surprisingly, they send Otani uh, with Mookie at the plate, take the bat out of his hands, and JT throws him out. Like that's really one that he even admit post game he was surprised that he went. And then in the ninth, while Romano right after he gives up a 2-run home run, feels like disaster is imminent, gets JT throws out Chris Taylor, who's in the pinch run, um, where he was figuring that
Michael,
was going to
let's
happen. He
Michael
said, yeah,
just say it. You just say what you want to say.
"Well,
David
I'll say
Roberts is an idiot.
sending Chris Taylor, I don't think is was terrible because he was the tying run, and you want to get the tying run to scoring position." JT said, "I was expecting him to go at some point. The strikeout, throw him out was just kind of peak. That was pretty electric." I will say this about Romano. It was a disaster, gave up the home run, but after that, he had a really nice strikeout to Teoscar Hernandez after walking Will Smith, had like, on the strikeout throw him out, was a really well pitched at bat to Max Muncy, like, a guy who, although has been struggling, is a terrifying hitter to face. I never wanna see Max Muncy in a big situation, to be honest with you, because I know that Lardy troll can send one about 500 feet over the fence. So I never, ever wanna see Max Muncy in a meaningful situation, and that was he pitched that really well. But the focus is on JT here. JT hosing Otani with the game on the line or the game feeling like in the balance with runners on to get out of the jam, like that was electric. Up 3 with Mookie as a tying run. That was impressive. That's something where I thought last year JT's throws were not as good. I thought it
He had
took until
his
later in the
knees were he had a
season.
knee issue.
Right, like, it took until later in the season, post-surgery, for his throws to get a little bit better, quicker, more accurate, but, like, this year, it looks like it's on. It is on. He is throwing
Well,
lasers
the
down
knee
there.
surgery he got midseason is a surgery you want to get in the off season because you need a lot of time to recover. Like, can you still
Mhm.
play? Yes. Are you going to be as effective as you would be if you're
Are you
healthy?
gonna be in
Absolutely not.
are you gonna be in constant pain? Yeah,
Yeah.
but if JT's going to become a really, really elite defensive catcher, like more so, like he has been, but if that's going to even get better, you have no reason not to like bring him back, and like that's something that you can live with as your 8 or 9 hitter, like we talked about with him
Yeah,
playing
like
great
to me, the
defense.
way they talk about him, he's sort of like the Molina type guy for that team, where they kind of don't care maybe so much about his offense. They just need his, like his glove behind the plate and his ability to call games and
Yeah,
how he
it's
handles the
different.
pitching staff. That's
You look
something.
at like Martin Maldonado, where like that was kind of why Dusty Baker was playing him, but it was like wrong. Like the pitching staff would be worse when he was catching, and like his defensive game had fallen off pretty extensively, and he was also a terrible hitter. That method works if you're actually good defensively, and like JT clearly is. He's been a machine behind the plate, honestly, the whole season, and last night did a lot to kind of save the game and help clinch it for us. So really, really high on JT's defense at the moment. I'm pretty high on pretty much everybody. Hopefully Nola has a better outing. It's a shame because Nola he's going today. This will be the last point before we get into the rest of baseball. Aaron Nola last week against the Nationals. It was it was the most Nola start
I
ever.
was
He
texting you and
was
I was like, "What?" I'm
stealing.
like, "Bro, come on."
I told you his bad starts are, a couple guys get on and the homer and it makes everything look
Do you
miserable.
notice
And
during the Nola starts where he kind of goes, if he doesn't get run support early, is when
it
I think
gets
he gets in
risky.
his head. Like,
Well,
I need to
because
do everything, and then he throws too many strikes.
he compounds the mistakes because it's like he was dealing, dude. It looked like it was vintage nasty Aaron Nola. And then he hits the guy in the toe, gives up a two-strike single. And then it's like you saw here comes Josh Bell, and you're like, you see this shit coming from miles away. Elevated fastball that didn't get in, and it gets absolutely
I
smoked.
mean,
And it's
Josh
just
Bell
like
just kills the Phillies, Michael. I
he
mean,
does, but like that ball was on a high tee for him. Like it just
I do, knock on wood, I do feel like when you see the bad Nola starts, it's never against like the Dodgers or like
let's
the
hope today, man.
Brewers or like the Padres. It's
A bad
all,
Nola start comes against not great teams for sure.
yeah. Like,
So
it's like,
hopefully today's good. But it's like you look at last, he was looking great. Made like two really bad pitches, and they happened to just be a 3-run home run and a 2-run home run. So hopefully that doesn't happen again today, and he gives you a good outing, and you can win a series against the Dodgers, which would be awesome. But into the rest of
I'm
baseball,
excited. Do you want to stay in the NL East before we go through?
yeah, let's talk about the Braves. They got their first win last night.
Yes.
Um, they got their first win last night, which, by the way, was the final leg of my parlay that cashed. So shout out the Atlanta Braves for winning 10-0
That
against the
was not
Marlins.
hard to bet the Braves
No,
last
that was the freest bet ever. Schwellenbach is actually pretty good, and the Marlins are obviously horrific. So that was only a matter of time before the Braves got their first win.
night. However,
Um, I'm not no team to start 0-7 has ever made the playoffs. One, I don't think that holds a lot of water because teams have gone on 7-game losing streaks and made the playoffs. Like theirs just
no,
happened to
but I
come at
think
the
most
beginning of the
teams
season.
that start out 0-7 are usually garbage.
Right. And like the Braves aren't garbage. So
Yeah, but
I'm gonna
this is an old sport, Michael. Like, that's kind of a tell. I mean, well, okay, let's.
I listen, when the Braves make the playoffs, I'm not gonna be the one to be surprised.
I mean, listen,
Uh
I'm not going to be surprised either. They're going to make the playoffs, but like, if they're like 5-20, like they're probably going to fire Brian Snicker because he's a basically he looks like a swollen testicle who doesn't know how to manage properly,
he
and
does look like a swan.
he's a little bitch. So
Yep.
like, and he's a crybaby. Like,
They would definitely get a vibe switch if they fired Brian Snitker, I think. Not that I think his thing is gotten stale.
what would you do? What would you have done if when Saquon played the first Rams game, when he
Mhm.
scored that touchdown, the second touchdown to break like the Eagles single game rushing record, and
Mhm.
Sirianni went up to him, hugging him almost in tears, and says, "I can't wait to see you do this in the Super Bowl." And we lost to the Packers in the first round. What would you have thought about Nick Sirianni at that point? Go on, tell me.
No, I would have been pretty pissed.
Well,
I just would not have been
well,
happy. Yeah, no, it's funny.
well.
It's funny.
Don't you
Um,
think that he's probably cooked? He's already talking about retiring. He wants to be, it's going to be Paw,
yeah.
play with his yeah. He's already thinking about playing with his not wanting to manage to play with his grandkids. They should just fire him right now at this point.
Perhaps they should. No, but yeah, the Braves are in an interesting spot. We'll see how that season progresses. Something I'm going to keep a big eye on for sure. The Mets are like fine. They're being the Mets. They're being average. There's nothing. I'm not really surprised by what I'm seeing from the Mets. It's kind of as expected, I guess. Like, you know,
If I was Scott Boras, I would have had written into Soto's contract. He should get a $10,000 bonus every time he draws a walk, because he's going to lead
he's gonna
MLB in
honestly. It's
walks this
the
year.
yeah, yeah. Um, the other teams are really not worth speaking about. They're not. We want to think about
The
some
Marlins
bigger
are a
stories
surprising
here.
4-4 though. Like,
Well, I mean, they swept the Pirates on 3 walk-offs. I don't know, like, it was just kinda what it
yeah,
is.
they're still garbage, Michael. But I think my thing is that the team I'm a little surprised with how bad they are the Nationals. Like Dylan Cruz, like
Their
Michael, Dylan
bullpen
Cruz
well,
should not be in MLB right now. He needs to be back in AAA.
yeah, Dylan Cruz is not going to win Rookie of the Year, that's for sure. And
That's a donation to the duel if you bet him to win Rookie of the Year.
that is a donation to the duel. Also, in addition to that is, their bullpen is just bad. Bad, 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 bad. Very bad bullpen. They are not going to win a lot of games because of said bullpen. Like, perfect example last night, I also had wagered in that parlay that hit the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I wanted to kill Brandon Pfaadt because he had given up 3 home runs and 4 earned runs, and they were losing. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I got to take a deep breath because the Nationals bullpen is going to have to come into this game and finish it, and they're going to blow it. And by all means, Corbin Carroll, 2 home runs, Randall Grichuk, go ahead, 2-run double, like electric stuff from the Snakes there. Um, yeah, they're bad, man. So
So
the main story I want to talk about, not the main, but like the just key thing I want to talk about here, the Cincinnati Reds. So they lost last night again, 3-2. They had lost back-to-back games by a score of 1-0. They lost the third straight game, getting shut out. Before they scored 2 runs in the 8th inning against the Milwaukee Brewers, the Reds had gone 35 innings. 35 innings without
that's
scoring a run, John. That's almost 4
that's
games.
four whole games.
That is nearly 4 whole games. It
So they
spanned
ruined
from
someone's nerfy and then proceeded to not score any runs after that.
they went they didn't score in the end of one game, and then they got shut out 1-0. They got shut out 1-0, and I think they got shut out 3-0, and then they lost last night 3-2, where the only 2 runs came in the 8th inning. 35 innings, man. That is a long time without
They have a
scoring a
low
run.
key. They have a decent like starting rotation.
The problem, yeah, and it's like producing well. The problem is, and the big problem with the Reds, and why this is very bad for their outlook, is that they were supposed to have a lot of these hitters, young hitters that they have,
Ellie De La Cruz,
like
Matt
besides
McLean.
Ellie De La Cruz, really, because he is good, and I'll be patient with him. Everyone else is supposed to be a lot better than what they are. McLean, um, who am I thinking of? Matt McLean, Spencer Steer's supposed to be just better. Um,
I mean, they have Jamer
TJ Friedel was the guy.
Candelario, who, like, before he signed that, like, he had a
He was
good
really good
contract
last
year,
year.
and he's just,
Hmm.
he's okay. He's an average player.
Yeah. They're just supposed to have better guys. The guys they have are just supposed to be better, and they're not.
Hey,
And
Michael, they signed Austin Hayes to be an everyday player.
yeah, and I think he's like their four hitter or something. So that's not
Like,
really.
that should show you how, like, anemic. Like, I'm not very familiar with their farm system, but if they have somebody that they need that is, like, really good that they're going to
Hmm.
call up, they may want to consider that over the next 6 to 8 weeks, because I don't know if this offense is going to necessarily get
No,
much better.
it's a shame because a lot of people were like hot picking the Reds to be the team that like surprises everybody, goes on a run, maybe to make the playoffs or something. And this is it's just bad offense. It's
Let me ask
really,
you.
really bad
So
offense.
let me ask you this, Michael. So if there a team right now where they're going to probably win 90 to 95 games, and they just have no shot in the playoffs, is the Chicago Cubs.
I still don't even trust that they're going to win 90 to 95 games. I think
They play in a garbage division.
they do. I am
Look
expecting.
at look at the
I'm
AL
kind of waiting
Central
for the
last year with the
Brewers.
White Sox, bro.
I'm kind of waiting for the Brewers to wake up a little bit, um, and throw themselves back in that race and be like two teams that are going to win like 85-ish games, and we'll
I don't
see
know,
who
man.
wins.
I feel like there's only so much, like, cooking you could do with, like, analytics, where you still just need the players.
Yeah, where it's just like a year where you miss on the margins is just a bad year. Like
Yeah,
if you
like,
don't hit on
you still need the Jimmies and the Joes,
we'll see.
right?
I guess we'll see
Like,
if the Cubs
I still think they could win like 80 plus games. It's just like,
we'll see if the Cubs trade Kyle Tucker not at the deadline. It'll depend on their positioning of the division. If they're not in first place in the division and
if they're
not
in
looking
first
at a
place
playoff.
and they trade Kyle Tucker, that would be the most bonkers move.
If they're
Because,
in first place, they won't. But if they're in
I don't think it's gonna be like Rantanen with, like, in
no,
the
if they're in like second and missing, looking like they're going to miss the playoffs, they will trade Kyle
like,
Tucker.
they
I
look like
guarantee
they're
you
gonna
that.
be buyers. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of starting pitching right now that's been really good to start the year. And, like, the one guy who I feel like is, like, this guy is, if he continues to look as good as he's been, because he's ridiculous, is Sandy Alcantara. Michael,
Yeah.
like, literally, I will guarantee you he will not be a Marlin by the end of June.
June. Wow. That'll be
They traded
something.
Arias in, like, mid-May.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be something to keep up on. One other funny note, I guess the last note about the National League, at least maybe all the league, depending on how we feel, was it was funny going into yesterday. The Padres were 7-0, and the Braves were 0-7, and their percentages to win their respected divisions. Padres were 7-0 with a 5% chance to win the NL West, and the Braves were 0-7 with a 33% chance to win the NL East. So, very, very funny stuff. You know, just the Dodgers effect and the fact that the Braves are still scary even when they're not playing well.
Even though
Um,
the Padres have, like, one of the most, they have probably two of the most dynamic outfielders in the
mhm.
National League, with Jackson
Yeah,
Merrill and obviously Fernando Tatis Jr.
yeah.
And they still have some other really good players and decent pitching.
The Dodgers are just another level for
Exactly,
sure.
exactly. Like,
Um, that's what that was the Dodgers stat. And yeah, so that's it for the National
go
League.
to
Is
the
that all you want
American
to talk
League.
about?
So
Not
obviously the
much going on.
Yankees are hitting just a bazillion.
Judge is just unbelievable. He's just not gonna stop hitting home runs, I think, ever. Um, it's
It's a shame, because he started his career kind of like Ryan Howard, where he was like 25.
he didn't get called up till like 2016. I think was his first year. He was like a
So, yeah,
25-year-old
Aaron
rookie.
Judge in his career. So now he is 32. He's going to turn 33 in a couple weeks. He has 321 career home runs and a career WAR of 53.3. So to put it into perspective, Michael, if your WAR is at a minimum 60, Like you should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, maybe not be elected the first year. However,
I mean, he's still
like
good.
Aaron Judge is like he might be like the fastest player to 500 home runs ever. That is
Yeah, I
on
mean,
the table.
he's hit as many home runs in as many games as like Babe Ruth, and like we know all about that Fugazi. So that's like, we're uncharted territory here with the modern hitter with Aaron Judge. He's putting up like Bonds level numbers, but without being Barry Bonds. It's just it's really insane what he's doing. I think for the betterment of the sport, it's good if he stays healthy, and that's always been kind of the biggest concern with him over the years. Obviously, his playoffs are another thing, but him being healthy in the regular season, he's going to just continue to put up insane numbers. Clearly, he's showing no signs of stopping.
What are your thoughts on the Orioles? They're just pitching is just so bad.
Yeah, they're disappointing because they have a lineup that is capable. It looks like Cedric Mullins might be getting back to like his 2021 form, which would be really cool. He's a fun player when he's good. And then, Gunnar just got back healthy, played his first game of the year
That's the
last
thing
night.
is that I feel like that team is going to go as far as Gunnar Henderson takes them because you saw he had that monster first half last year and they were playing really well and they sort of tailed off like the Phillies at the end of the season and he was struggling.
Yeah, and they're going to go as far as their lineup takes them because their pitching staff is just bad. It's not that good. And it's a shame. They're not serious about wanting to win. I'll just say it. It's not like you had Corbin Burns on the roster and you had, an incredible regular season because of it, and you
I don't
just
think
let him
Corbin
walk.
Burns wanted to re-sign there. He wanted to go to Arizona.
Well, I think they probably didn't offer him a good contract. Like, I think if you offered him a good contract, he would have really weighed it, but he didn't. Um, I don't know. They weren't serious about adding pitching at all. Pretty disappointing. And the last thing I want to talk about is Rafael Devers.
Oh boy.
Really, really something. So obviously is very upset that he's not playing third base anymore, despite the fact that he is one of the worst third basemen in the history of baseball. And the Red Sox are like, they're not a stupid organization, so they're not going to do that.
Yeah, the Red Sox have always been one of the most analytical
Alex
organizations.
Cora especially has always been kind of ahead of the curve in terms of tendencies and trends. And him looking at my options to play third base being Rafael Devers or Alex Bregman, really, I don't think was a hard decision for him. Unfortunately, Devers is kind of throwing a hissy fit because of it. He looks like he gained some weight over the off season and is like, what is he at? One hit on the year, two hits on the year now.
He
He broke
has
his 0 for like
5
20.
hits so far.
Oh wow, he's on a heater then. I mean, he just got his
Oh
first one on
boy,
like Thursday.
Michael, I can tell the sarcasm is just dripping
God,
right
he
now.
was at one point 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts. So I think, 5 hits at this point. I wouldn't be
4
surprised.
singles and a double,
I
3
listen,
RBI.
it's a start. It's a shame because he got paid and is definitely a fan favorite. And if he's going to go out sad like this, like that's the Red Sox faithful will not treat him kindly. I don't know. Does he really want to play the field that much? Like, can you put him at first base, or is he just that bad with the glove on his hand that he shouldn't even
Well,
be near the diamond?
if you remember when the Red Sox let Xander Bogaerts go, who was like their clubhouse leader, he
Right.
was like their guy, beloved Red
Well,
Sox player. They pivoted to re-sign Devers because their fans were just like so pissed over
yeah,
the
they
whole
needed to keep someone. I mean, it was
right, and
Bogarts
it
came on the
seems like
heels
to
of Mookie.
me, and it seemed and like obviously Bogarts looks like he's washed because he's just had a severe
Yeah, it
injury.
looks like the Red Sox made a good move there.
Right, but the Red Sox probably should have just traded Devers when he was demanding that contract because his like it took them having to give Alex Bregman a large contract to like force him to move, and he threw a hissy fit over it.
Yeah, unideal stuff.
Yeah, so then the American League Central is a complete dumpster fire. I mean, I don't think that's surprising.
Yeah, yeah,
Look
and
what
the
though, American League West, Astros. I really thought Isak Paredes was gonna be this demon.
yeah, I think there's listen, we're only 7 games into the season, so we shouldn't be too overzealous on certain things.
I don't
But
know.
no, I agree. I thought
He was
Paredes
ass when he was on the Tigers, and then he goes to the Rays. I feel like he might be a Rays creation.
could be a Rays merchant, but feels like the Astros sort of have that same devil magic. Feels like they got to be took
Yeah.
at.
Well,
Did they lose it
they
all? I don't
used to
know.
have that devil magic, and then the owner of the Astros was like, "Oh, let's get rid of the analytics people." So, like, you have dumbass Dusty Baker.
Right.
Yeah. So they
I think
used
there's
to
I
have
think there's a
that
good
magic.
version. There's a good version of Paredes that I think yet to come around. I don't know. I think we'll see it come around eventually. But yeah, the AL West is going to be a fun division to follow. I think those teams are pretty evenly matched across the board, and if they're all healthy, looks like the Rangers could have the inside track if they're all healthy. But if that's a big question mark with some of their guys being very notoriously injury prone. Um, but yeah, baseball's in full swing, man. We're in a good spot right now.
Lastly, Mike Trout kind of got off to a slow start.
He's fine in it. He's a couple home runs in the last few
It's the same.
games.
He's approaching. He's in like the Griffey Reds part of his career.
Like late Griffey, even when Griffey first got to the Reds, he was still.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
it's
we're
like
we're, we're getting into a sad
it's
part of that.
sad. It's sad to watch in a
Hmm.
way. So, but I don't know, man. Like, if he goes on a heater and he's healthy, like it's going to be annoying because you're going to see people say,
The
"Oh,
Phillies should trade for him.
yeah," and then stick him in like right
And he
field.
should not play center. So I don't know.
No,
I don't know any team.
no.
I don't know any team that's going to actually be able to feasibly trade for Mike Trout with that contract
If
situation.
you're hating Nick Castellanos that much, not you personally, but like, look at Castellanos' contract and look at Trout's contract. You tell me which is the worst contract right now. It's clearly Trout. They're
Isn't
going to
that
have to take
something?
a bad
And
contract
the
back.
Castellanos contract is a bad contract too.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
anyway,
Anyways,
thank you everybody for tuning in. Enjoy the rest
enjoy
of
the
your weekend.
sports today.
Big sports day today. Yeah, go and it's still
Don't go
cloudy.
outside.
Don't go outside. All right. Take care,
Go
everybody.
Phillies.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.